The snow was coming down sideways. The world outside my windshield had turned into a blinding blur. The roads swallowed by the howling white storm. My wipers were fighting a losing battle against the thick ice, the cold biting through the cracks in the car's body. It was the kind of storm that numbed your bones before it chilled your soul. The wind screeched, pushing the snow sideways in a ghostly dance. The phone call had come in less than 20 minutes ago, a voice barely audible through the crackling line. 2 puppies, in a box, behind the dumpster, 7th and Morgan. They're freezing. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to ignore it. The storm was fierce, and the roads were dangerous, but I knew I couldn't. Sometimes the calls that sound impossible, like this one, are the ones that matter the most. I should have been at home, curled up with a blanket, waiting for the storm to pass. But something tugged inside me, something deep and restless, urging me to act. It was as if the storm itself was pushing me forward. The air was thick with cold as I pulled the truck onto 7th Street. The alley loomed ahead, swallowed by the swirling snow. I knew what I had to do. I didn't stop to think about it, didn't question my decision. I slammed the truck door shut and ran towards the dumpster, my feet sinking in the fresh layer of snow. It was then I saw it. Just a box. A soggy cardboard box, battered by the elements, wedged next to the cold metal dumpster. It was barely visible in the whiteout, but there it was, as if the storm had refused to let it be lost. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding. As I knelt beside the box, I could hear the faintest sound, the scratch of paws, the soft whine of something small and scared. What I saw when I lifted the box would stay with me forever. A tiny German Shepherd puppy, maybe 8 weeks old, stood inside, trembling violently. Snow crusted the fur on his back. Ice clung to his whiskers. He was so small, so fragile, yet still standing. His amber eyes looked up at me with a mix of fear and desperation. But there was something else there too. Something stubborn. Something that told me he wasn't going to give up. But underneath him, curled against the soggy cardboard, was his sister. She wasn't moving. Not even a twitch. The snow had settled on her fur, turning her into a little frozen statue. I felt my stomach drop. My hands shook as I reached for them both, but the little boy, Leo, I'd later name him, wouldn't let me take her. He stood between me and his sister, trembling, but still defending her. I looked at the pair of them, and in that moment, I understood. Leo wasn't just trying to protect his sister. He was holding on to the only family he had left. He wasn't going to leave her. Not even for the cold. Not even for the storm. I gently picked up Luna first, my arms cradling her as I rushed her to the truck. Leo followed, but he stayed close to me, never straying far. I turned to him, my voice soft but urgent. "Come on, buddy. We're getting out of here." I pulled them both into the warmth of the truck. Luna was still barely breathing, her tiny body cold to the touch. But Leo, he was awake now, and he stayed close, his eyes glued to me as if asking for something more. His sister was still in danger, but he was already thinking of how to keep her safe. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel, and I couldn't help but glance at the two of them in the rearview mirror. In the silence of the truck, the storm outside now felt like a distant memory. The only sound was their breathing, and Leo's occasional whimper as he nuzzled closer to his sister. I wasn't sure if Luna would make it, but I wasn't going to let them die here. Not like this. Not when they still had a chance. The clinic smelled of antiseptic and anxiety, a scent that mixed with the faint warmth of the heater. But the warmth didn't reach Luna. She was still ice cold, her tiny body limp in my arms. Leo, on the other hand, was wide-eyed and alert, as if the storm outside hadn't shaken him. But this new environment had. I walked into the clinic, my boots clattering against the tile floor as I gently cradled Luna to my chest. Leo followed me closely, his paws patting softly against the floor, his nose twitching at every new scent. I could see the wheels turning in his little head. What was happening? Where were we going? Dr. Hayes met me at the door, her expression tight with concern. The moment she saw Luna, her face softened and she held out her hand. "What happened to her?" she asked, but her eyes were already scanning the little puppy's fragile form. "She was frozen. Her brother kept her warm as best he could," I explained, my voice unsteady. I didn't know why I was shaking. Maybe it was the sight of Luna so still, or maybe it was the shock of seeing Leo's desperate need to protect her. But there was something about the way he'd huddled next to her, refusing to leave her side, that made my heart ache. Dr. Hayes nodded, guiding me to the examination table. She took Luna from my arms, her hands warm against the puppy's cold body. "We'll take care of her," she reassured me, but I could hear the quiet uncertainty in her tone. Luna's chances weren't great, but we had to try. I placed Leo on the floor beside the table. He whined softly, his head cocked to one side. His amber eyes never left Luna, and it was clear from the way his small body trembled that he was deeply anxious about her. He didn't bark, didn't even growl. He just watched, his gaze intense and worried, as if trying to figure out what was happening. Dr. Hayes gently worked on Luna, checking her vitals. The coldness of her little body made her pulse slow, the tiny thud of her heart barely audible beneath her fur. She wasn't moving much. Her chest rose and fell weakly, but her breaths were shallow, labored. "I've got a pulse," Dr. Hayes said, though it didn't sound reassuring. "But it's weak. We need to get her warm. Fast." I nodded, my eyes never leaving the two puppies. Leo was still sitting there, unmoving, watching his sister with such focus, such intensity, that I couldn't help but think, he's already become her protector. As Dr. Hayes worked, I knelt down beside Leo. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, reaching out to scratch behind his ears. He leaned into my touch, but his eyes never left Luna. There was something so strong, so primal about the bond they shared. It wasn't just sibling love. It was something deeper, something that went beyond blood. It was loyalty, instinct, a promise to never leave the other behind. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Hayes spoke again. "She's not out of the woods yet, but she's alive, and that's a start." I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding, but even as relief washed over me, I knew the battle wasn't over. Luna was still fighting, and so was Leo. They'd both survived the storm, but now they had to survive each other's healing process. The doctor turned her attention to Leo, but the moment she stepped forward, he stepped back. He wasn't aggressive, just cautious, protective. His ears were flat against his head, and he gave her a low whimper, more of a warning than anything else. "It's okay, Leo," I said gently, kneeling beside him. "She's here to help. She's going to help Luna." His eyes flickered between Dr. Hayes and Luna, but his posture relaxed just a bit as he sat back down beside me, never letting his guard down completely. He was still watching, always watching. It was clear. This little dog was already deeply devoted to his sister. Nothing, not even a stranger in a white coat, could make him leave her side. As the hours passed, Luna's condition slowly improved. the warmth from the heating pads, and the careful attention from Doctor. Hayes had begun to restore her body temperature. Her breathing grew steadier, less labored, and for the first time since I'd found them, I allowed myself to hope. But it wasn't just Luna I was worried about. Leo's eyes were growing heavier, his tiny body exhausted from all the stress. I could see the worry in his gaze, but also the tiredness. His loyalty was absolute, but it was beginning to take a toll on him too. I picked him up and cradled him in my arms, just as I had with Luna. He rested his chin on my shoulder, a soft sigh escaping him. There was something so fragile in the way he leaned against me, so trusting, that I couldn't help but whisper, "You're safe now. You both are." Leo's small tail wagged weakly, just enough to show he trusted me, that he understood. I hadn't promised anything, but he didn't need promises. He just needed to know that his sister would be okay, and that I wouldn't leave them behind. And in that moment, I knew I wouldn't. The first morning that Luna opened her eyes was the moment I realized how much I'd already grown attached to them. She blinked a few times, her eyes still dull, but there was something there, a flicker of recognition. Her tiny body, still fragile, shifted in the warmth of the blankets. Leo was beside her as always, his small body curled protectively next to hers, his head resting on the edge of her neck. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching them for a long while. It was like witnessing the beginning of a new chapter, not just in their lives, but in mine. The puppies had come from a place of cold and abandonment, but here now they were warm. They were safe. Leo stirred first, his amber eyes slowly opening. He stretched out, then immediately checked on Luna, nudging her gently with his nose. When she didn't respond, his tail flicked nervously, but he didn't give up. He nuzzled her again, licking her cheek, a soft, comforting gesture that seemed to calm him as much as her. Luna blinked again and let out a weak whimper, just enough for me to hear. Leo perked up instantly. His attention snapped to her, watching her with those wide, trusting eyes. And then he gave a little yip, as if calling out to me. I leaned in, reaching out to gently stroke his fur. "Hey, buddy, she's gonna be okay. She's just waking up." I wasn't entirely sure of that yet, but I couldn't let Leo see my uncertainty. The bond between them was so strong. Leo had already claimed his role as her protector, and I couldn't let him think for a moment that he might be alone in this fight. Dr. Hayes had said that Luna's recovery wouldn't be quick. It would take time, patience, and a lot of love. But every small sign, every tiny movement, every soft sound was a victory. As Luna's eyes began to focus more, she turned her head slightly, her gaze falling on Leo. He was sitting up now, his tail wagging cautiously, looking up at me for reassurance. When their eyes met, something shifted, a spark of recognition, a quiet comfort. Luna's small body, once stiff and fragile, now relaxed beside Leo, her warmth slowly starting to return. That was when I knew. This wasn't just about saving two puppies anymore. It was about building something. Trust, loyalty, and a promise to give them the love and stability they needed to heal. I spent the rest of the day with them, sitting on the floor, talking softly, and offering them the comfort they needed. The clinic had done what it could, but now it was up to me. I had no medical training, no special knowledge. I could only give them warmth and love, and that's what I did. The first time Luna tried to stand, it was wobbly, shaky. Her legs trembled beneath her, and she gave a little whine of discomfort. But Leo was right there, standing beside her. He didn't push her. He didn't force her to move faster than she could. He simply watched her, waiting, ready to support her when she needed it. When she finally managed to take a step forward, I couldn't hold back the tear that slid down my cheek. It was small, just one little step, but it was everything. Luna was fighting, and so was Leo, together. By the time evening came, Luna was lying in her bed, but Leo had settled next to her again. This time, however, I noticed something different. Leo wasn't just looking out for Luna. He was starting to trust me too. He let me get closer, allowing me to sit beside him as he rested. For a moment, the puppy who had been so wary and anxious now seemed content, his breathing steady, his eyes half-lidded in sleep. It wasn't just relief from the cold anymore. It was comfort. It was trust. The night passed quietly, the air in the small room thick with the warmth of new beginnings. I sat there for a long time, watching over them. This was my life now, I realized. A life where I would protect them, help them heal, and somehow try to repay the trust they were giving me every day. By morning, Luna was stronger. Her little steps were more assured, her tail wagging slightly as she slowly approached me, then nudged her head into my palm. She trusted me. She needed me. And that realization hit me like a wave. Leo, still cautious, followed her lead. He sat next to me, his small body pressed against my leg, and for the first time, I felt the weight of his affection. It was quiet, it was subtle, but it was there, a thread tying us all together. I knew now, as the morning light spilled in through the window, that this wasn't just a temporary fix. This wasn't just about saving two puppies. This was about making a home for them, a home that would be theirs forever, a place where they would be loved and protected, a place where they could thrive, not just survive. And in return, they were already teaching me something I hadn't even realized I needed to learn: the strength of loyalty, the depth of trust, the power of love. Together, we were healing. I kept telling myself this was just temporary, that I was only fostering them until a proper home came along. But that illusion shattered the moment I opened the front door. Leo walked in like he'd always lived there, confident, curious, and completely at ease. He sniffed the air, glanced back at me once, then trotted further inside, his tail wagging in slow, assured swings. Luna followed, more cautious, but her nose twitched with every new scent. She stuck close to Leo, her steps hesitant until he nudged her gently. It was like he was telling her, "It's okay, we're safe here." I stood in the doorway, holding their leash loosely, watching them claim the space like it already belonged to them. They wandered from room to room, exploring corners, chasing the light that spilled through the windows. And then Leo stopped. His eyes locked on something across the living room, Max's old bed. I hadn't had the heart to get rid of it. For a year, it had sat there untouched, an echo of the past, a quiet reminder of the dog I'd loved and lost. Leo walked straight to it. He sniffed it once, then twice, then climbed in and turned a circle. Luna joined him seconds later, curling up beside him as if the spot had been made for them. I swallowed hard. Max would have liked them, I thought. I sat on the floor near them. Not too close. Not yet. I didn't want to interrupt whatever quiet understanding they were forming with the space. But Leo looked up at me, his amber eyes soft, and slowly, he scooted closer, placing his head gently on my knee. Luna watched him for a moment before doing the same, resting her head against his side, her body warm and still. That was the moment I stopped pretending. I wasn't just their rescuer. I was theirs now, completely, and they were mine. That night, I didn't sleep much. Not because the puppies needed anything. They were fast asleep, tangled together in Max's old bed, but because I couldn't stop watching them. Their soft breathing, the way they curled into each other for comfort, the trust they had in me already without even knowing my past. They didn't care that I was still grieving Max, that sometimes the silence in this house felt too heavy. They didn't need me to be perfect. They just needed me to stay. So I did. In the morning, I made breakfast with 2 small bowls on the floor and a smile on my face. Leo ate fast, eager, and clumsy. Luna was slower, delicate, but she never strayed too far from her brother's side. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were starting to live. It started with a visit to the local community center. I hadn't planned on taking them anywhere yet. They were still adjusting, still learning the rhythm of our home. But something tugged at me, like they were meant for more than just recovery. The center hosted after-school programs for children going through tough times. Some had lost parents, others battled trauma too heavy for their small shoulders. I had volunteered there once, back when Max was alive. The staff remembered me, and they welcomed us back. Leo entered first, head held high, tail wagging with gentle sweeps. He looked around the room filled with hushed children and cautious glances, and walked straight to a boy sitting alone in the corner. Eli, 9 years old. He hadn't spoken since his father's accident. Leo didn't bark, didn't rush. He simply sat beside him, close but not touching, waiting. Eli glanced sideways, then looked away, then looked again. After a long, fragile pause, Leo nudged his hand with his nose, not demanding, just an invitation. And Eli, without a word, placed his hand on Leo's head. Across the room, Luna had found a girl curled into herself on a beanbag. Her name was Sienna. Her hoodie was pulled over her head, sleeves covering her hands. She hadn't smiled in weeks, the staff said. Luna didn't hesitate. She climbed onto the beanbag and carefully curled into the girl's lap. At first, Sienna didn't move. Then a hand appeared from the hoodie. Fingers dug gently into Luna's fur, and the smallest smile bloomed like spring in the middle of winter. I stood there frozen, watching these 2 little souls, abandoned in a storm, somehow finding the strength to heal others. The counselor touched my arm. Her voice was soft. "Can they come back?" I nodded, swallowed the lump in my throat. "They'll be here as often as you need." That night, as we drove home, Leo rested his head on the center console between the seats. Luna sat curled in the passenger seat, sleepy and warm. I looked at them, once broken, now becoming something powerful. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were healers. 1 year later, almost to the day, I drove back to the alley. No snow this time, just a cool wind stirring dry leaves across the pavement, and the dull hum of city life in the distance. Leo sat in the back seat, staring out the window with quiet focus. Luna lay beside him, her head resting gently on his paw. They both seemed to know exactly where we were going. As we pulled up near the dumpster where it all began, I parked and stepped out slowly, heart heavy and full all at once. Leo jumped out first. He didn't bark, didn't pull on the leash. He walked straight to the spot where that crumpled cardboard box had once sat. Then he sat,